Today, we're talking about one question that I get pretty frequently, which is sort of the work-life balance thing of being a creative, sort of keeping that creative space going financially, mentally, and how to just keep up the consistency. Because that's something that's, I'd say, pretty overwhelming as a creative, is like, oh man, do I have to make daily vlogs? Do I have to make consistent content to stay popular and to stay relevant? There's a couple of things and a couple of practices that I have put into motion that I want to share with you guys so that you're not overwhelmed when it comes to being a creative. You're actually excited. I think you can face burnout pretty quickly, especially in the overwhelming space of, let's say, daily vlogs or daily Instagram uploads or whatever. Personally, I have not reached that tipping point. One of my big goals and initiatives for the beginning of this year was to stress way less. So I've been able to do that with my expectations of how I create. So to give you guys the question that I get pretty frequently, I'll answer it right now. So the big question is like creative fatigue. How do you make money while still being creative? A really good example of where creative fatigue can really propel from is when you're only consuming and working on content that is not creatively fulfilling. Personally, I come from, or at least when I started making videos, I started by doing a lot of client work. I needed money in my pocket, and so that was something that I had to consistently do. So I was really overwhelming my sort of creative, neurons or brain waves, or I like to think of creativity as like it's in a bucket. Like you have like this bucket filled with like this liquid called creativity, and every day it gets filled up to a certain amount, or maybe when you go to sleep it starts to refill itself, and that's boom, the bucket is filled. But then over time, throughout a day, let's say you're working on a really creatively taxing project, maybe just super boring, or you had a bad day, or there are different little things that start to poke holes in that bucket and by the end of the day, the bucket can be empty. So by the time you get to the point of which you need to create something, there's like a little tiny bit left in there. So then now you have this expectation. You're like, man, I need to create. I need to make something to stay relevant online, or to stay relevant in the world of online content or whatever it is. And you try and make something and it's not something that's fulfilling. That is an issue that at least I would face. I'm not too sure if many of you have done it. And this goes across the board with being like a musician, with being a writer, with being whatever. So I've sort of come up with a formula to where I don't face this problem as much anymore. And a formula that I'll discuss way more in depth in future videos, but the beginning and sort of the brass tacks of it all is to stress less and hold less expectations for what you can actually achieve. That's a huge thing that a lot of people do, not only within the creative space, but just within living. We expect a lot from what we can actually provide ourselves with. So for example, you'll start your sort of to-do list in the morning and be like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this, because you're full energized. You've got like your caffeine bucket is filled. So you are just zooming. But then by noon, you missed a couple of your to-do lists. And then you're like, oh man, I didn't do those things, but I was so fast in the morning. There are peak performance times in everybody's schedule. And usually when we make our to-do lists, we write them in our peak performance time. So when it comes to the time that we start to dip, we have so many things scheduled because we're expecting us to be as productive as we were at our peak point, but we're not. And that's the first thing that I've started doing, is actually expect less and get more out of the lower expectations. I think setting goals and setting reminders and checklists are amazing. They're really great. But they're only effective if they are actually enhancing your productivity in a sane state. Like if you're not feeling good about yourself or good with yourself when you wrap up your work because you didn't get everything done that you had written in your to-do list, then that to-do list is not holding an effective purpose for you. And you need to sort of monitor how much work you can actually tackle throughout a day. So you're A, not overwhelming yourself, and B, beating yourself up because you've just been defeated by your to-do list that you created to make yourself more productive. If that makes sense. So that's the first thing. I'm expecting less of what I can perform. Now, the second one is the whole relevancy thing. I see the internet being this space of where people are like, oh, I'm relevant. I'm going to upload this stuff because I want to stay relevant. And to a certain extent, it is somewhat true, right? I mean, we have to sort of stay relevant online in order for people to be reminded and remember our existence within that space. And I hate saying that because it's totally against sort of my morals and the way I live my life. But to be successful online, I do believe relevancy is an important element. Now, that might be relevancy of the content you're creating too, right? So like whatever you're making, if it holds no relevancy into people's minds and you're just making something that is completely unrelated to anything out there, chances are it won't get absorbed by a stream of people. But if you're making things that are relevant to a group of people, now we see this across the online spectrum of like people make relevant content about movies and they do reviews or video essays, or people do tutorials or talk about cameras. Those are all streams of relevancy. It's something people are thinking about. And so whenever I were to come out, let's say with a vlog that is just my day by day, the reason why it gets less views than perhaps something of like a camera review is because it holds less relevancy to a stream of audience members. Now, not to say that my vlog holds less purpose or satisfaction, which I'll get to there in a sec, but it holds less relevancy. And the same goes with the amount of content that you create. It's almost like seeing someone every single day. When you go to work or you go to school or you go to hang out with people, you see that person every single day, they're going to stay more relevant in your brain. They're going to be at the top of the list of people you think of when you think of people. Think of mom and dad, your best friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, whomever it is. They're at the top of that list. Same goes with your content. If you're constantly sort of staying in people's minds, then that will stay at the top of said relevancy list. Again, I'm not promoting this. I'm just sort of saying this is how it works. But this leads to something I would like to think as burnout, right? You see a lot of vloggers and daily creators, which I find super overwhelming, the people who upload stuff consistently, because I definitely could not achieve that. Kudos to whomever can do that because it takes a lot. And I can definitely see myself burning out as a creative if I had to consistently keep uploading stuff. So what I've sort of done is created a sort of breakdown of how I upload my content and when I upload my content and why I upload my content. The why is incredibly important. You need to have a motive before you publish, create, or put time into anything. Because if you have no motives, if you have no reason to, let's say, work on something, then you're going to regret the decision and you're going to maybe even stop halfway through because you had nothing to drive you to do that thing. That makes sense, right? Like you can't just hop in a car and drive somewhere because when you're halfway driving, you're going to be like, I don't know where I'm going. I have no idea what I'm doing. And you might turn around and just go home. But if you're like, no, I'm going to go to the park to go for a walk because I love nature, well, boom, you have a destination. You have a motive to get to that destination. And when you get to the destination, you'll have the reward because you thought about getting there. Same with goes to creating content. So for me, the first thing is I initially start with a why, and then I lead that to the very end. Now, if you have a why for whatever you're creating, as opposed to just being like, I just want to stay relevant, well, then that's not really going to be a good enough why to get you going. You have to be like, I want to make this one video because for me, it's like if I don't make this one idea, I'll go crazy. And I've heard other daily creators talk about this where it's like they actually, like Cody Warner is a perfect example of this. I've heard him talk about this, and Cody, if you're watching this and I maybe am misquoting you, I apologize, but watching like his content, for example, like he sort of has to consistently create because he's in the same boat as me. It's like if I don't create something all the time, whether that a drawing, a video, Instagram post, a photo edit, whatever, I'll go mental. I'll go crazy. It's like there's a million ideas swarming around in my brain, and the more I create, the more I want to create. It's like this idea of creativity makes creativity. So if I'm constantly thinking of stuff and have no output to put that creativity, it's just staying in the bucket. And going back to the idea of like the creativity bucket, if it's full and then it keeps getting more and more full, it's going to overflow, and then maybe some bacteria starts to grow into that water, and then it starts to get tainted, and then I go crazy. So I do need to empty the bucket every now and again. And the best way to empty said bucket is to, for me, create videos, to write content. Like right now, I have like a bunch of different little like Google Docs and notes and all of that stuff open for multiple streams of ideas. Like that's how my brain works. So if you find yourself as that type of creative where you're doing like the multi-stream creativity thing, do that. But also be conscious of when you need to sort of empty the bucket out or poke a hole in it so that you can stay fresh, for lack of better terms. Now, the other thing is the burnout aspect. So how often do you create so that you're not burning out? There's a couple things that I utilize to make sure that I'm kind of staying consistent. For me, I have different outlets and avenues that I work on. So, for example, I create content for this website called Premium Beats, everything from blog posts to video posts. And I sort of create like why I want to make it, and I share that with the team. And then that sort of creates a motive to make a video firsthand. But secondly, it allows me to make something that I'm really excited about and I'm really pumped for. Maybe it's an idea that I'm curious about. So I have great outlets to where I can be creative. And luckily with stuff like that, it's all about scheduling. It's like scheduling like what your day is going to be like. For example, my Instagram posts, for instance, like I post maybe every couple days personally, like me actually like taking time out to put that stuff out, but like to post every single day takes a lot of time out of my day. So to be honest, for those of you guys who are watching this, a lot of my posts I've pre-made. I use an app to pre-make them to post them out so that I'm not overwhelmed with having to like, God, I got to do my Instagram posts. I got to do my YouTube videos. I got to write an article. I got to message this person. And like, I don't want my YouTube or Instagram or the things that like I really enjoy become a job. Like that's not fun. So if I'm able to sort of schedule certain things and prioritize certain things, that allows it to become more of an organic process as opposed to being a slave to that thing. And sometimes like even YouTube has scheduled video options. So sometimes I'll just schedule a video, I'll upload it, schedule it. I mean, this is not so frequent. Usually the videos I create, I publish immediately or I put out when they're fresh, and I just want the fresh response part of it. But some things I schedule, and scheduling content is very important for, let's say, if you want to stay relevant, but also not be overwhelmed, it's a great idea. So maybe if you're feeling super creative one day or you have a ton of time one day, like blast out a ton of different things, edit a bunch of stuff, schedule it, be that in like a scheduling app for, let's say, your Instagram post, if you're, let's say, you're a photographer, or on YouTube, you can like use the scheduling function part of that. And that'll make sure that you are staying on top of your game if, let's say, that's something you want to do, but also not burning out because you're just so overwhelmed with like, I got to create stuff. That's the other thing. I've heard a lot of creators talk about this, but it's the idea of like, I have to make something to stay in the eyes of everybody. Now, this isn't contradicting to what I said before, but in fact, just kind of going deeper down that rabbit hole, which is the fact that your audience or whomever you think is watching you really doesn't care if you're sticking to your, let's say I post every Monday and Thursday schedule. You are focusing on that. You will beat yourself up more than anybody out there because at the end of the day, like us as viewers, like I'm speaking as a viewer, if let's say someone whom I follow doesn't post on the Thursday that they say they post, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, my day is ruined. I'm going to send a bunch of mean comments. Chances are I'll just watch someone else's video in that time frame that something is not published. So you don't have to feel that pressure from everybody to be consistent. The only person who will give you the most pressure is yourself. And that's with everything that I'm talking about. You are your greatest critic no matter what. So be conscious of that. The biggest bully in your life for consistency, for uploads, for whatever, is you. And I'm sure you guys already know that, but it's something to, as like a quick little refresher, to remind yourself with. So going back, because I definitely get off track on this sort of stuff. Going back on track with being creative and consistently creative. Some other sort of habits or routines that I have is I have a calendar that's literally calibrated to how I operate. Now, I will definitely do further things on this because I'm so obsessed with this. But the idea that it's like my calendar or my creativity or my productivity planner is scheduled to how I operate as a human. Now, for those of you who have a, let's say, day-by-day schedule or day-by-day routine to which you can't really do this for, this might not 100% apply. Let's say you have a daily job that you have to attend to, your 9 to 5. But there is a way to make this work to your favor. And what I'm talking about is I took a whole day. I know this is crazy. I took a whole day and just studied what are my peak performance hours? What is the time of day that I am the best? What time of day am I the best physically to go, let's say, work out? What time of day am I the best emotionally to talk to people? What time of day am I the best to be creative, to work on projects for writing, for editing, for answering emails? And I figured out what parts of day, again, this is why I probably do a whole other video on this and maybe make up a document for it. But let me know if this is something you guys want to learn more about. Type that in. But I basically created a productivity schedule, which literally wasn't time framing any specific projects I was working on, but more specifically, what I scheduled my day part of with my creativity or with my motivation. And what this did was now I am not forcing myself to, let's say, write something at a time of day that I am not creatively calibrated to write. And I'm not forcing myself to shoot a video talking to camera when I'm not creatively calibrated to do that. And I believe that we're all different. So let's say the document that I'm talking about probably does not cater to you. And it does not cater to your creativity, your motivation, because I'm a different person than you are. And that's a big thing that you guys need to understand, is that do not expect yourself to have the same creative schedule to which another creative would have, right? Someone like Casey Neistat or Cody, whom I was talking about before, upload daily content. And that's really good for them. That's something that they can do. That's something that they're fit to do. They're trained to do. A lot of other creatives out there can't. Myself personally, I cannot upload daily. Now, yeah, I'll have a spike in my excitement levels and I'll be like, I want to post something every single day. And maybe I will do that. But I'm not expecting myself to do that because I know my body is not trained to do that. I can't upload daily vlogs. So expect what you can actually perform using your peak performance abilities. And again, for those of you who want to learn more about this, please write that in the comments, and I will try and make something, whether that be a document or a video, that talks more about a productivity planner, because I definitely think that is something that is super valuable as a creative, and just to hold less expectations for yourself, as well as for others to hold expectations for you. So I think that's about it. I mean, hopefully that sort of answers the question of the big lofty question, which is how to not stay overwhelmed with being creative or to suffer from something that a lot of people go through, which is creative burnout. It's going to make sure my microphone's still going. Oh boy, wow, you guys have been in for a real treat. It's been an 18-minute video, and I don't think there's many edit points. I probably won't cut too much out of this. So that's awesome. We're in for that. But yeah, overall, the number one thing that will lead to your burnout is expectations of self. So create realistic expectations for yourself, not from the standard of which other people whom you idolize have set, because they have their different levels of productivity. The way, let's say, Peter McKinnon is productive is completely different than the way I am. And I'm not expecting myself to be at his level because he's a different human being. He does different things, he has different interests, and it is very foolish of me to think that I could be at his level of what he does. Now, that's not saying that I could ever get to the level of, let's say, his success, but that's saying that I won't be able to be at his level of which his time frame is for being productive, because that's him. Different brain type, different creative type. So expect less of yourself, calibrate yourself to your perfect optimal time, and work from there. Now, hopefully this video was helpful to you. And if it was, this was a huge help to you, please let me know in the comments. Like it, share it to all your filmmaking friends if this is something, or creative friends specifically. And also, if you guys have any questions, write that down there and let me know, again, if this is something you want to learn more about. I am obsessed with this idea. I think that's about it. That's all. Just figure out a way to balance having fun and exploring the world before putting it behind a camera or in front of a canvas or whatever. Experience and pleasure definitely goes beyond and before putting a lens over it. You definitely have to have a life before representing the fact that you have a life on a platform, be that Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo, MySpace, I don't know, Facebook. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up. Hit that bell if you want to hear me babble on more. If you found this type of stuff engaging, like a 20-minute video of me just talking to you on camera, let me know that as well. I would love to share more. That's it. That's all. I'm probably going to start my day and have a good one. Keep making some great stuff. Oh, and if you're curious what this sort of setup looks like, I'll widen the camera, and then I'll just do a little woo. That's what the lighting looks like. That's what the room looks like. I don't know. That was like a little BTS thing. Anyway, goodbye.